Because we all like stories, especially stories of success, here's another David and Goliath type situation that is another example of how necessary this process is for all of us. Since there will be more of these types of situations that we will all happen upon in our lives several times a year, where we must have a process that can help advocate for ourselves more effectively as our first line of what I call defense, to garner resolution before determining if it's important or necessary to retain a lawyer. And if this process does not work, because remember, there are no guarantees, if this process doesn't work, then your second attempt could be with a lawyer. For those who can afford to invest several $1,000s or more and have the time to let the legal process play out, which can take months, and in some cases, several years, depending on the matter at issue. Now, in the story that you're about to hear, this was a full-out application of this process because this couple urgently needed to get their health insurance reinstated quickly. Secondly, it was aggressive due to the size of the company that he needed action from. They were well over $50 billion in annual revenue, one of the top 5 healthcare insurance companies in our country. Now, I will do my best to tell the story. I get a little wound up because this person happens to be someone I know. This person was a firefighter working for a large chemical/petroleum company in St. Paul, Minnesota. Well over 20 years ago, there was a huge explosion. And as a firefighter, he was called to put it out and was unfortunately involved in the explosion. To date, he has had over 41 different surgeries to his face and his neck, skin grafts, etc. His skin is pulled so tight, his skin shines. He's had massive stress, anxiety, and various things that he's had to deal with in his life. There was a federal lawsuit where the United States sued this chemical company and found the chemical company at fault. One of the stipulations in the federal court order was that this gentleman and his wife and family were ordered that health insurance be kept on him, on his life and his family, through his 68th birthday. Recently, he called me with some pretty wild language on the phone, stating that his wife had just gone to pick up her prescriptions at CVS Pharmacy and was informed that their insurance had been canceled. He had no knowledge of this. They weren't informed of this. No letter, no email, no phone call, etc. So all of a sudden, his former employer was in violation of a federal court order, a federal court order. Let's just say he had a situation and his hair was on fire and he wanted his health care insurance reinstated as fast as possible. Because he knew me and because he knew that I was writing the Power to Get Justice, he called me and asked if there was anything I could do to help him. I then read the document of the federal court order. I pulled up the research on who the executives are of his former employer. I did the same with this huge healthcare insurance company. And I said, we're going to go at this. I'll help you craft the letter. It's going to be aggressive. It's going to be strong. What is it that you want? His response was, I want my health insurance reinstated as fast as possible. And if we can do this without us hiring a lawyer, that would be great. I actually doubt your system's going to help me because this corporation is so huge. They're just going to blow it off. The moral of the story is, we crafted the letter. It went out under his signature to, I think, 7 or 8 executives of this $50 billion plus healthcare insurance company. And I'm not exaggerating. Within 24 hours, they responded. 24 hours. The letters were Federal Expressed. Within receipt of those Federal Expresses, he had a voicemail on his home phone, on his voicemail, saying, oh, Mr. So-and-so, we're so sorry, blah, blah, blah. Within 6 to 7 weeks, his health care insurance was reinstated. They were apologetic. They were falling all over themselves. I'm so sorry. We don't know how this happened. Da, 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 da. Now, how are you going to get action and attention if you have a matter with a $50 to $100 billion company? It's almost impossible. But through this basic, ethical, direct system, whereby you're using key engagers to involve people's fear of loss, curious insecurities, competitive issues, and desires to be a player, thereby it creates consequences in people, and magically they start paying attention quickly. Now, had this gentleman done what his lawyer was recommending, which was just deal with the claims manager. You can work it out from the claims manager, and if you can't, deal with that person's boss. But for God's sakes, you don't need to go blasting into the organization and send this letter to 7 or 8 people. I would not advise this. However, that's exactly what we did. We didn't break any laws. We didn't break any rules. We just informed the senior executives way above the claims people what was going on, why we felt this was injustice, and magically they responded very, very quickly. This is a very, very powerful approach that needs to be used ethically and respectfully in order to increase your chances of garnering resolution. Was this couple nervous about using this process? I would have to say yes, they were. They had no expectation. Bottom line, they had an urgent matter and they needed action. They needed their health care insurance reinstated. End of story. Therefore, yes, they did have what I call hair on fire situation, and they were open to an unorthodox process where they were willing to try it and see what happened first before reaching out and formally engaging their lawyer, which they knew would be much more expensive out of the gate. They also knew that a lawyer couldn't guarantee them a positive result, which is a fact. This system doesn't guarantee a result, nor can any lawyer. So they tried this process first without having any expectation of success. Allow me to read the first quote from the book, The Power to Get Justice. And as I read it, let this story that I just shared about this fireman and his wife, let that story sink in. People and organizations are both funny and disturbing. In many instances nowadays, they will often avoid, ignore, or they won't move or pay attention until they believe they have to move or pay attention, even when they know they should. Garnering resolution and justice requires action, honesty, confidence, unshakable steadfastness, and proof that you have been wronged in some manner, or that you could be if X, Y, and Z doesn't happen. But even when these things are in tow, in order to garner resolution and the justice you seek, it often seems to require a significant consequence of some sort, whether real or perceived by the other side, before the individual or the organization that you seek justice from internalizes and weighs the potential consequences of not responding to you before they will move or act on this or that. The level of the consequence is what drives the urgency that is assigned to your matter. This common thread seems to apply almost universally to all personal and professional environments throughout the world. To ignore this basic truth is simply unwise. Think about this. No potential significant consequence present, no urgency assigned. no resolution achieved, therefore, no justice garnered. So using this story as another example, most people would have attempted to deal with only one person. And in their case, the person they were told to deal with was the claims manager. Supposedly, that was a high person on the totem pole of this $50 billion plus insurance company, with the hope that by dealing with the director of claims and explaining the urgency of the situation, that individual would then take the necessary steps to resolve their matter fairly rapidly. However, that is not how the world works. Almost never. People inside large organizations are often stressed out to the max. They're stretched way too thin, they're overtasked, they're underpaid, they're underappreciated, and what's worse is they sometimes have a chip on their shoulder about something, or sometimes they're dealing with brutal internal politics inside their own company, or they're scared to do the right thing unless they have air cover or permission from their boss or their boss's boss, etc. So by following this process, it actually created a situation which broadened the awareness of the matter to many more of the correct people who did have the power and the authority to do something about it, which created the consequences to act. Once it was communicated to these 7 executives of this specific healthcare company what might happen if the matter was not resolved quickly to their satisfaction. The very letter that this family used on this huge insurance company is actually posted in the book, The Power to Get Justice. So in summary, it will often be the case in situations and in matters that will come your way that there will rarely be any urgency on the other side with the individual or the organization that you have your matter with, which means you need to create that urgency yourself. This points to the necessity of learning how this process works and how useful it can be in a various matter of situations or matters of urgency to you, irregardless of whether they are personal or professional, so that you increase your chances of garnering the resolution in matters where you have been wronged, or you could be wronged if X, Y, and Z doesn't happen by a certain date. Now, as I've said, this process is a smarter, a more methodical, and a more systematic way of approaching situations which are either unjust or unfair or simply wrong. And it can increase by a factor of 2 or 3-fold the probability. There are no promises, but it can increase the probability of creating the urgency and the action and the resolution that you are seeking by following a pattern of persuasion that is time-tested and works essentially anywhere in the world, because it is based on simple human behavior and basic psychology. In the next vignette, the 4th in the series, you're going to learn about another application of how the process can be used to reduce confusion, disagreements, and legal disputes in business-related matters by creating more clarity on the front end, which can reduce conflict, disagreements, and, thank goodness, legal fees in any business-related matter, which should make you happy. Thanks very much for listening. I hope this was helpful. Everything that I've talked about and more you can find on our website at www.powertogetjustice.com, where you can also order a copy of the Power to Get Justice book. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for listening.